Hello and welcome to the week ahead. So 2 weeks ago, I talked about how the bulls were a bit out of control, and that there could be instead of the wall of worry climb, we could be heading into a FOMO chase. And then we had a week of nothing, and I thought, oh, I guess I was wrong, but I still could be right. I think I even wrote, I could be right still, and this digestion could just be fuel for the next leg up, which is exactly what we got when we gapped up on Monday morning and had this huge rally throughout the week, and then we basically have been sitting here. I don't know about you, but for me, I don't do great trading in that market. I feel like my edge comes from buying extensions to the downside and then capturing the mean reversion up and then possibly holding on beyond the mean reversion for higher, which is really where I'm trying to develop my strength, and I'm not great yet. I tend to catch that bottom and catch the first leg, and then I get out too soon, but I digress. So I think anybody would agree that we are slightly extended to the upside. So let's take a quick look here on SPY. So we had this huge extension down, followed by a nice big rally up. And I think we're like 90% of that rally up. Right, so if you look at this, so here's our move down, and then we basically touched the 2021 top, basically, down here at the bottom. And then we rallied like over 95% of that. So generally speaking, what that means is, the likelihood of a higher low is very high. And just change this back to my 50-50. Yeah, so you can see, like, generally speaking, I like to take my fib retracement and just break it up into two parts. There's the top part and the bottom part. And if a move is made and then we fail to break into the top part again on our retracement, then the most likely scenario is continued downside, and vice versa. If we break through that 50% of the retracement and we go back up into this zone, obviously the most higher likelihood is results in a higher low. Now, we did leave this gap underneath us here, and so I'm going to be talking about that a little bit when I go over what I think might happen this week. But regardless, I look at this and, like, I know for the last week I did okay. I had another green week, thank God. But it was not my best trading, and not my easiest trading either. I find that when we're in this FOMO chase mode, it feels like a high stress day for me when things are rocketing up and I don't have a full position I'm already sitting in, and instead I'm chasing short-term moves, which can easily reverse, and I do get lots of stop outs along the way. It's not ideal. And so I want to talk about what I think is coming this week, and I want to talk a little bit more, do a little bit of a deep dive into my ideal setups and what I look for those to happen. And this rally has been an eye-opener for me, where this was the first dump and rally where I did well, more than normal. And it was also the first time where I'm accepting that not only could I do better on these things, but I can do much, much, much better. I think these are the types of drops and rallies that should make my entire year. I think all of the other days of trading don't matter as much as what's happened in the last 3 weeks for me. And so I know that the opportunity will come again. And so I want to talk about how I'm going to be looking forward to that and how I'm going to be thinking about that. Okay, so just jumping back to the week ahead plan here. So at the end of the week, let's talk about that. Okay, so here's been our strong rally up through the last few weeks. And then at the end of the week, after hours, there was news that one of the credit agencies, Moody, had downgraded the U.S., basically the bond market, and that was causing us to pull back after hours. Now, we were already super extended to the upside. We have a gap here on the daily and the weekly time frame. And so, it really matters how we're going to react in the coming days. Like, is this rally going to continue to have strength or not? And so I think, to put it very simply, I think one of three things can really happen here. So I'm looking at this as this could be the spark that lights a small, a mid-sized, or a decent-sized pullback, right? And so it depends on how the market's going to react to this move. So as of right now, you can see this purple line here is the 4-hour EMA 12, and it's roughly been holding a support on this entire move up since we had set this first daily higher low back here. And so I think as long as that continues to hold, bulls really have nothing to worry about. And I think if we set a quick higher low here, we could absolutely continue up. So what's that going to look like? Okay, so here is where hourly oversold currently sits against price. And so my ideal situation for a daily higher low is to come in deep enough and fast. My preference is if it comes in super deep and fast into hourly oversold, so that there's a very clear stair step on like the 2-minute or the 5-minute or even the 15-minute time frame. But ideally, the smaller time frames are better, because then when you do get that reaction, when that stair step breaks, the reaction, there's space up to the moving average that is tracking that's enough to allow you to get into a risk-free trade pretty quickly and easily. And so, well, nothing is easy in the market, but that's one of the things that I've been working at for an edge for a long time. So that is my ideal situation. And if that happens, then that to me is just bulls remaining strong. We're going to just keep moving up in the way we have been. If that doesn't happen, we do have this gap over here that's worth talking about. So let's put that on the chart. That's basically from the low of this day. That's the gap below. I'll just say gap below. And then the daily gap fills here. So that's a pretty big distance, right? That's a very, very big move if we were going to try to fill that gap. It's worth noting that on the weekly chart, the gap is not quite as deep. So it's worth putting that on the chart as well. So I'll call it W, or weekly gap fill. So you can see here's the gap below, here's the weekly gap fill and the daily gap fill. So, you know, if we do drop below that hourly oversold, then we might be going for a weekly higher low, right? Which could be set anywhere in there. And so if we did a quick weekly higher low, typically in a strong uptrend, weekly higher low is marked by 4-hour oversold. So let's look at where 4-hour is. Currently, it's way down there. And I'm actually going to put this on the weekly chart here. Right. So yeah, it's pretty far below right now. But you know, the way that price action and RSI works is it's not as direct as you might imagine. But basically, if price is moving up, RSI will sort of track it. And as price comes in, it actually accelerates to the upside. And then if price goes sideways, you know, RSI will continue to track it and meet it, kind of like a moving average. But then you see when price comes down, it peaks, and then when price starts to rally back up, it curls over. So with a strong rally, you know, with relative strength, the RSI will pull away from price. And then as relative weakness comes in, like as the price accelerates to the downside, then it races towards it, right? And so basically what I look at this is if we started dumping really hard, price started coming down really quickly, that means that the underlying RSIs, hourly, 4-hour, et cetera, will start racing towards that price coming down. So it meets somewhere in the middle. So I'm always looking for, like, you know, if this raced down in the morning, hourly oversold would probably be hit pretty quickly. Whereas if it wanted to break through hourly oversold and skip a daily higher low and try to set a weekly higher low, it could absolutely just keep rushing down, and then 4-hour would rush up to meet it, and you know, weekly gap fill is right here somewhere in the middle. So I'm always sort of anticipating if it moves quickly, what's going to happen with RSI? If it moves slowly, what's going to happen with RSI? If it moves back to the upside, what's going to happen with RSI? And so if you want to get into a daily higher low or a weekly higher low, you want acceleration to the downside so that when it touches that RSI level that you're watching, I don't trade off of the RSI levels. I trade price action only, but it's something I'm aware of. Like, are we in oversold conditions on the hourly or the 4-hour time frame? Once we're in those conditions, then I start looking for the patterns that make sense for the reversal that I want to get. So that's what I'm thinking about for the coming week. One other thing that I wanted to quickly deep dive in was the time price opportunity chart, which I've got here. If you haven't watched it, I recommend watching Jim Dalton's week ahead videos on YouTube. They're short and sweet, and he summarizes this stuff really, really well. He's pointed out that on this chart, there's a key level at 58.80 on ES, where now that we've had this pull in after hours, we're going to see how is price going to react. Is the balance from here going to hold, or is that going to not hold, and then price will shoot back down? Like, he's basically saying if we get below 58.80, there's a lot of room to the downside because we then have the opportunity of getting into that gap fill. So he sees that. He's not saying the price is going to tank. He's just saying he's always if this, then that. And so if we hold that 58.80 level, he sees that as, you know, bulls continue to be strong. We set a higher low of some kind and continue up. If we break that 58.80 level, there's just less support until we get down to the gap fill area where under there's a lot of balance, right? And you can just look at that balance as support. So yeah, that's something we're thinking about as well. Okay, moving my head over to the other side of the screen, I wanted to talk a little bit about doing a deep dive on what are these opportunities I'm talking about where I see them as key to my broader success in trading. And so typically, it's not necessarily with SPY, but I want to talk about when we get to those deep oversold conditions on the daily and weekly timeframes and how important those are in terms of getting positioned for upside trades or either mean reversion or, you know, much further upside trades. And so I tend to trade daily oversold conditions and below on the Mag 7. So I've bought Apple on daily oversold. I've bought obviously like NVIDIA, Meta, names like that, Tesla. And when I'm getting into those positions, those tend to be my most comfortable trades. I feel very little stress getting in that location. And that's because I know, just looking at these charts, based on the history of what's happened, the likelihood of a bounce from there, even just a bounce enough to get risk-free, is so high that I have very little fear scaling in with bigger size than I normally trade with. And so if you look at, I'm zoomed out now to the weekly time frame on SPY, and I wanted to point out, so look at the bottom we got here. So one of the indicators I have on here is my version of it's my personal version of the historical RSI indicator that you can get at the chart guys. And basically what it is it's looking at the absolute highest and the absolute lowest that RSI has gotten in the history of the chart that I have here. And that's somewhat dependent on how what your plan is, because depending on how expensive your plan is at TradingView, you can get further and further distance back into history. But either way, like it's not an exact science. I just want to get a picture of how like extended are we getting to the downside or to the upside. And if you just look at this weekly oversold condition that we had here, firing with this little dot, the last time we had weekly oversold like that was back in 2020, March of 2020. And so that's over 5 years ago. So this is a very rare thing that happens. The closest we've come since then was back here in 2022. It touched twice on this low and this low. And then it got close over here in October of 2023 and never touched it again until now. And so if you just look at what happened with RSI and what happened with price. So let's take a look at this one over here. The last big deep where we got a weekly oversold that actually got into the historically oversold RSI. The rally from there was insane. And so these are key levels that matter a lot. Like when these things happen, you have to be ready to not just buy, but buy and hold. Like be prepared to buy enough that you can sell some so you can get risk free, and then hold on to a lot more for the ride up, and then just be patient and let it work. And so I am still holding some of the shares that I bought in QQQ and another name ITOT that I trade. Those are my long-term holds. But I got into a lot of short-term trades that I got out of that I'm just kicking myself for not holding. So it's something I definitely want to focus on and improve, because if I just held on to those trades, two weeks longer than I did, it would have been so much more of a win than I got, which I love my wins. I'll take any win I can get. But I'm just like, how can I maximize my profit when I get into these trades? And so, and the next time that they come, I want to make sure that I do it with a much larger size than I've been doing, because I'm able to. I have the ability to. I just haven't been pulling the trigger because I felt like I'm still not senior enough. Well, I think the time has come to step out of those shoes and into the shoes of a proper trader and just take the trades I need to take. So, you look at this and basically when it gets to these historical levels or even just weekly oversold, the likelihood of a mean reversion is really, really high. So let's take a look at a couple of these. This one rallied hard. This one here, it didn't quite get weekly oversold. It didn't get the dot occurring, but I'm sure that in the day as that bottom was hitting, it actually did hit weekly oversold. It's just that it didn't stay weekly oversold, and so you didn't get the little dot here on the chart. But you can see it touched here, right? On the bottom of, you can see it there, how it coincides with this bar here, and then again here on this bar, right? And from both of those bars, there were rallies. So this is what I mean by sometimes it's a mean reversion and sometimes it's a hard rally that continues. So when we got weekly oversold here, if you'd managed to get in on that low, you definitely could get a nice win off of that trade. Even if you went in with massive size, you could look for it to retrace back to the weekly EMA 12 or whichever EMA you follow. Maybe it's the 8 EMA or whatever. For me, it's the weekly EMA 12. And then you sell a portion there. And then if it comes down lower and stops you out, that's fine. Here you got weekly oversold again. You could have tried again right there. And then you would have gotten, again, a nice huge trade, not just to the mean. I look at the moving average as the mean in this case. So you could sell a portion there and then look for higher. And then when you set this peak and then break that weekly stair step, you could have sold more. And then held on to the rest, and it would have stopped out here, right? But then what you get is this divergence where you've got a lower price and a higher low on RSI, and that's a bullish divergence. So you definitely want to be thinking on this low here, oh, look at RSI where it was, look at RSI where it is. This is a bullish divergence. I think I want to buy back in. So there's a lot of nuance that you can play here to try to make this work. So not everyone is golden, right? But this last one, it's so hard in the moment. I know how hard it is, because when at the time that the market was tanking, on the days that it was gapping down, like on this final day where we gapped down to these lows, think of all the people that it shook out who thought like, this is the bottom, this is the bottom, this is the bottom, all the way down. People are buying in, and then getting stopped out. And then we get a gap down here. This gap down, after 1, 2, 3 gap downs, we get another gap down. That to me, like a third gap down in the S&P 500, that's just a huge opportunity. And I was buying that day. And also just, you don't know it till the next, like look at, on this day, they would have been like, look at the volume on this day, we're never going to beat that. And we beat it the next day. So you never know where that climax volume is actually going to hit, and it's going to finally be the bottom. But you did have this clue that the 2021 top lined up perfectly with what ultimately was the bottom. And you can look at this as a perfect, like from a technical chart perspective, this is a beautiful, beautiful retracement and rally from this prior high. Like you can't make this stuff up. So anyway, on the daily time frame, fear in the market, everybody panicking, and people are getting real scared. That to me is like, it's perfect. We're daily oversold or weekly oversold. We're crushed. RSI is crushed on like the 5, 15, 1 hour, 4 hour, 12 hour, daily. And now we're weekly oversold and we're on a third gap down. This is when I say this is the place where I find it the most stress-free trading, where I trade with bigger size, because I'm like, you couldn't ask for better conditions for a mean reversion. It's like, look how far away we are at that point from when we opened, where we were 10% away from the weekly EMA 12. And like on the downside, we have this 2021 top just 2% below. Like, even if you just took that like 5-to-1 risk reward trade and just put a stop below the 2021 top and took an entry on the open with a 2% risk, the mean reversion to the moving average is like a good likelihood you're going to get that. That's not what I did. I was so confident that I was like, I don't even know where my stop is going to be yet, but I'm going to start scaling in now. And I had like a dollar amount I was willing to risk. And so when I think about the next time this is going to come, that's what I'm thinking about, is like, how much dollar risk am I going to put on this next time? And I think I need it to be a lot larger than it was the last time, because this has proven again and again and again to be a thing that I'm actually pretty good at, and I need to do it bigger. And so how often does this happen? Well, let's just look on the weekly time frame. How often? On the weekly time frame, not often. Like once every 5 years, 10 years before that, 2009 to 2020 was the last time. So between weekly oversold, very rare. Daily oversold is a little more frequent, but not very frequent. So like in 2024, for example, we hit it 1, 2, that's 2 times that we got close, and that's on SPY. So again, if you need to wait for this kind of a trade to set up, once, twice a year, that's a long time to wait. However, not all stocks act the same. Now, for the most part, they do move in a similar way, but that's where I start to look around to the other names that I'm interested in and try to anticipate, what's looking good for that sort of setup. Now, the last thing I'll say on this is that setup is not necessarily just buy here because it's weekly oversold, or buy here because it's daily oversold. It's got to be something that makes sense on the higher time frame, right? So Microsoft, let's look at that one really quick. So Microsoft has been looking terrible, and has basically been going sideways since all of 2024 through to January of 2025. So basically a full year of sideways, I've heard people calling it dead money. Let's zoom this out a little bit. Let's go to the monthly chart. So this is where it was. It was just hovering up here at highs, and then it starts to come in. And I'm zoomed out looking at this going like, oh my goodness, like from a monthly time frame perspective, yes, the actual trend here was broken. So if I put on like this indicator, you'll see the trend got choppy, and then we basically had a down break out of this. There was a monthly uptrend, broke bear, and now we're basically breaking bull out of it. So, but to make the trend look a little cleaner, you might do something like this. Go 2 month. And then you see it's a solid uptrend. And this test here, again, was the 2021 top test. So all it took was zooming out and being a little more prepared for this to anticipate this move might happen. Now, I don't think that anybody thought that we were going to rally this high this fast. And going back to SPY, go back to the 1 month, 1 week. Yeah, I look at this and I'm like, I don't know that anybody anticipated this. And like, what do we think is the likely thing that's going to happen from here? I don't know. I mean, a lot of people are saying highs are coming and soon. That's possible. We'll see what happens in the short term. We got to see if we can hold the daily higher low, maybe get a weekly higher low, or if we're just going to continue to shoot straight up. I think, honestly, this move has caught a lot of people offside. And if you put yourself into the mindset of folks who maybe sold out of fear, or I know some people, great traders who were advising people to, this would be a good time to get out of your longs. They were advising that up here, especially for people who were, beyond the age where they want to stay in the market for a lot longer. They might have taken that advice and they might have sold some stuff and like a lot of their position. And now we're coming back up to where it was before. Like, I can't imagine the mind games that are going on in people's heads around this. I think that it's going to, like, a lot of people are probably like seething with emotion because of what's happened here. And maybe the people who held on might be thinking, they held on through this whole dip, and as it was at the bottom, they were kicking themselves. Why didn't I get out higher? And then it comes all the way back up, and they're like, oh my God, thank God I got in. But is this just going to crash again? Like, what's up with this like movement? We've never seen this before, So, and then it depends on, there's so many different perspectives you can have. If you got out and now it's rallying back up, you're just tearing your hair out because you thought, oh my God, thought we were going into a recession. I sold everything, and now we're back up to highs. Like, what the hell? And so I think that this is just a wild market, and I'm personally kind of happy that I held my long-term position I had, and I've only added to it here. But like, I look at this and I don't feel confident in any direction right now. I feel like, to me, the thing that would make the most sense, the thing that would make me feel calm and a little bit more at ease would be something like this, where, okay, we got this bottom. What if we set a top, and what if we tighten up for a little bit? Like, I don't even care if we go down, but just tighten up a little bit. and show stability for a little while, and then figure out which direction we're going to go. Like that would be something that I feel would make sense and would be more of a healthy move than what I think some people might be considering is coming, which is we get this down, we get a lower high, higher, and then boom, and then keep the rally going up to the upside. So who knows what's going to happen? All right, but the point is, this opportunity has just like got my brain going on like I need to be more ready the next time this happens, and I need to document what my plan is going to be when this occurs, and I just need to set some alerts that like when the alert goes off, it's like points to the location of my plan for the next time this occurs, so I can go review my detailed plan that I made right now, so that I knew what to do in the future when that happens. And I'm going to put that plan together probably this week, and maybe in a future week ahead I might share what that plan looks like. Okay, so to wrap up and summarize. So confidence level coming into this week that we're going to get daily moves or weekly moves or monthly moves. I think my confidence level is pretty high that either on the daily or weekly we will get, I wrote mid, but it's much higher than it's been. My confidence level has been very low that those types of things are setting up. This week I feel like there's a better likelihood that we get a daily higher low or maybe even a weekly higher low, as I described earlier, possibly filling one of those gaps either on the weekly or daily time frame, hitting either hourly or 4-hour oversold for a daily higher low or a weekly higher low. Those are the setups that I'm going to be looking at. I'm not necessarily looking at SPY. I almost always trade big tech names, and so I'll be looking at technology names for those setups. The names that top of mind for me are I'm going to be watching NVIDIA, I'm going to be watching PLTR, I'm going to be watching Meta, I'm going to be watching Tesla to see what's possible out there. So this week I'm a little more excited than I was in previous weeks because we're finally getting a pullback. Pullbacks are what I look for. I look for some sort of extension to the downside to find a location to enter for a bullish trade. So this week, the simple statement is daily bulls have nothing to worry about as long as we hold hourly oversold and daily higher lows. If for some reason those fail, then weekly bulls have nothing to worry about as long as we hold 4-hour oversold and weekly higher lows. If we sink lower than that, then bulls have something to worry about. However, I will say that like leading this entire move up here on the daily time frame has just been mind-boggling and to me, and very difficult to get involved with as there have been gaps to the upside and then just super strong moves and like very little extension, the type of extension that I look for to get into a trade. And the bears have been nowhere to be seen at all. Like it's like the bid has been relentless. And so I'm looking forward to a little bit of that turn. I'm going to try to be patient this week and not try to rush into any trades, because if the bears do finally show up, I want to see what they're capable of doing. But if I see a setup, if I see a daily higher low setting up into hourly oversold conditions, forming a chart pattern that I'm familiar with trading into an area of prior support, I'm going to be interested, and I'm going to try to take those trades. Okay, so that's it for me for the week ahead. I hope you have a wonderful week and happy trading. Hey everybody, if you like this channel and you like the indicators that I provide on TradingView, please remember to like and subscribe.